So what is a COO at a scaling fintech in New York? I just want to welcome everybody to Clair HQ. My name is Nico Simko. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Clair. This week is New York City Fintech Week, and we felt like it was a good time to just reflect on building in New York and double down into what I think is one of the toughest yet underrepresented in the media position at a fintech, which is the position of Chief Operating Officer. It's a very difficult one. It's one that usually is not out in the media with their pictures being taken, but those are the people who run the organizations, who make sure that things are delivered on time, things are built, they deal with most of the complicated things. And with that, I think I'll start with Dan, who's directly on my left. Dan is the COO of Bilt, and I'll maybe pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming to this. And Nico, thank you for putting this on. Alex, thanks for putting this on. I'm Dan Seder. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Bilt Rewards. Bilt is a home and neighborhood rewards and payments platform. Hopefully we have some members here. But essentially when Ankur is founder and CEO, when we first met in 2018, we met at a BCG incubation office up in Hudson Yards. Ankur is one of the best entrepreneurs I've at least come across. And he was thinking about his kind of next idea. And rent was our biggest expense. Rent was for both of us, 30, 35, 40% of our income. And we said, hey, look, we get value back when we book a flight, go to dinner. Everything else we do helps build our credit, build our savings, just having a better experience. And rent was the largest thing we spent money on every month. And it was the only thing that we were not getting any value back for. So that was kind of the genesis of Bilt. Literally the first 4 words we put on the whiteboard was how to make rent rewarding. We want to continue to add more and more value in and around local neighborhoods. But the genesis of Bilt is how do we make the experience for renters, and we can get into a little bit what we want to do in 2025 around homeowners more rewarding. My background, I was a history major at Brown.
Useful background.
Yeah, it's like useful background. Took a very finance traditional approach of starting my career at Goldman Sachs and working in private equity for 6 years. I'm on my 12th year in New York, so we can kind of get into that side of it. And then stumble into Bilt.
Go ahead, Alex.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Nico's co-founder. It's nice to have everybody at the office. I had no part in organizing this, so just showing up to a lot of happy faces. When we came into the space, we were really thinking about, people are working every day, they're clocking in, and Nico and I are both from Switzerland. We sort of arrived in New York 9 years ago and kind of saw the credit system in the US for what it is, really sort of based on credit scores, based on taking out a bunch of cards and making sure you've got capital to sort of iterate through debt to make sure that you can get debt. And really the genesis of it was, well, people are working every day, people are clocking out, especially sort of like that lower underserved portion of the United States. And all this data is not being used to underwrite folks. And that's when we just started iterating into what Clair would actually become. And today what we do is we're an embedded lender. So for those of you guys who know Affirm, Klarna, buy now, pay later firms, we sort of distribute in a very similar way, but we work with payroll providers. So companies like Gusto and TriNet are our customers. And we'll basically allow the millions of people on those platforms to pull their paycheck on a daily basis if they need to. And people really engage with us. I think we see usually sort of a 20% engagement on a monthly basis number because these folks don't have options when there's an unforeseen doctor's visit, or you have to repair your car, or you have to do your groceries for your family. And what we've seen is like a lot of those folks essentially wouldn't have done that expense at all. So they would have missed the doctor's visit and not gone to work because of a broken car. And so yeah, it's really sort of a mission that's close to our heart. We're about 5.5 years into the journey, and really focusing on continuing to enable payroll providers who hold all this data to provide more and more financial services to especially sort of the lower income hourly worker segment in the US.
Dan, I'm going to go back to one thing you said before we go into building in New York and the COO journey. I think the credit card market is extremely crowded, and you guys have taken by storm the credit card market. I've seen Bilt rewards not only on placated around New York, but also a lot of my friends use Bilt all the time, and that's a difficult kind of change. So Can you explain what you think made Bilt so successful so fast and how you were able to take a lot of New York's, credit card market?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly it's a similar thing that you both have as well, which was it starts with, maybe it doesn't start, but a core component is distribution. Our real break came in COVID. We were banging our heads against the wall for 18 months, trying to talk to rewards companies, real estate partners, banks, et cetera, the networks, and nobody really cared to talk to a 3-person startup. And then COVID hit, and traditional travel, hospitality, et cetera, everybody stopped doing that. So the traditional rewards categories all just died, and everybody said, hey, wait, you still gotta pay your housing expense every month. And so I kid you not, the first couple days after COVID, nobody was doing anything. But the week after, we got 4 inbounds from people who we had been following up with 5 times, and nobody responded, saying, hey, you guys still doing that? And we're like, oh wait, we might actually have something here. So that was kind of the lucky kind of kickstart that we needed. But really it was putting together the group of large real estate owners. When we went to anybody from Hilton to Amazon to MasterCard to JP Morgan, nobody gave a shit who Bilt was. They cared about the 2 million units that we had put together, and we were able to represent the largest housing player. So I think distribution was one. That was a key thing. It allows us to, on the second part of the equation, create a very compelling value prop for the customer because of how cheap we can acquire the customer. So I think the second part of it was, how do you create a very compelling value prop? And we kind of think about that in a couple different ways. It's the actual rewards that you get, the value of the rewards, how do you build amazing transfer partners? But it's not just rewards. How do you build an actual experience as part of that? How you can use those points. It's embedded. I rode Lyft this morning, so I'm earning rewards on my Lyft ride, but I also actually paid for the ride with my Lyft points. And so we only come in with a pay with points integration into Lyft. So everything was about how do you actually create a more embedded partnership, ties to customer service, and then ties to the brand. I think we really wanted to build a brand that resonated with a lot of people in this room from everything that we do. It's now, we opened up a Bilt Cafe, our first one in our headquarters a couple blocks down from here. You gotta come check it out. Coffee here is quite good too. So, I don't know how much better the coffee will be, but when we opened it up, we were blown away. People were walking from Brooklyn for a free cup of coffee on the first month, which is rent day. People want to feel a part of something. They want to feel a part of their neighbor. They want to feel a part of their community. It was much more than $2 cup of coffee. It was the experiences. We have a place that people can hang out, et cetera. We do these Bilt comedy events, and members stay for hours. And so I think tying into that was a big part of our ethos as a company, and we've tried to embed it in the member experience as well.
That's amazing. Alex, if you reflect on our journey, what do you think was, one of the most surprising things, and you can do either surprising or the biggest learning, you've had on the journey?
Maybe just as quick background, Nico and I's focus has always also been kind of around distribution. So we just ran into this space being all right, these companies, they have data and they oversee all these employees, and there's something there that we can be building with the right product, et cetera. And I think that is a typical East Coast way to see things, is to just rush into how do I get this into as many hands as possible and maybe not second guess whether the product you have is the right one to try to get into people's hands. The other thing to bear in mind is that we're first-time founders, and I definitely sort of know what I'll change the second time around with regards to that. But we were really married to this idea that we wanted people to be using our card specifically. Now, in Bilt's case, people are used to switching out credit cards. That's normal. We just ran into the debit card market, stood up a partner bank. We were working with, actually, one of the funds that incubated Bilt, called Kairos, came to us and they were like, guys, your average card spend is higher than American Express. You guys are doing really well. And we're talking about a low income customer base. And so we just kind of fell in love with the idea of this customer that was never gonna pay a fee for a wage advance because they could be using our debit card, and we had these amazing numbers, but guess what? Not many people were using the debit card, right? And it was always, we were retreating this problem in every single way. We were oh, it's a marketing issue. Oh, it's the way we're going to market through employers. Oh, we went through, we had a huge list on a whiteboard that Nico and I did one night, and we checked all the boxes over years, and we got through all of them, and none of them were correct. And that's when we realized, okay, well, literally the product is the wrong one. People don't want to switch bank accounts. You all opened bank accounts in your teens probably, and probably still have the same one. And so just focusing on actually people are totally fine to pay a fee, and moving that money over there is what literally changed the business. Like you would have seen me a year ago, I would have had bags under my eyes. I wasn't going to the gym. Now I'm fine because the business is running itself. And it was really just this fundamental product difference. So I guess like my lesson, to keep it maybe too high level, is product market fit really matters. and you need to assume you're wrong.
I love it. All right, now we're gonna go into the real topic. Why build in New York? So tech is usually synonym to Silicon Valley, right? But we've built everything. These both companies have built everything in New York. We've always been in New York. We don't have offices, I think, in San Francisco. So why build in New York?
So when we were, I don't know if you remember, when we were trying to raise for a seed, we went to San Francisco and we didn't have girlfriends or anything at the time. We're both married now, but, and we were like, oh, should we move here? You know, it's beautiful and all the VCs are here, et cetera. And I kind of remember being in a couple cafes or lunches, and everywhere we were, someone was like pitching a business. And it was just like constant founder energy everywhere. And I remember that kind of personally threw me off, because I was like, if I'm here, every little trend, every little founders should be like this and tech companies should be run that way, is going to affect the way I think, instead of just fundamentally focusing on our customers and our partners. And, you know, it's not the entire reason, but that really played a role in why I wanted to stay in New York personally.
Dan?
So if my partner was here, he built his first company out in SF. He would go on a long tangent on why New York over SF. Given that I spent the last 10 years of my life in New York and never lived in SF, I won't bash SF because, you know, it could probably be a very good place to build a company there as well. I do think just, you know, we've been a 5-day in-office New York City company since the day we started. And it's been an unbelievable experience. I think the talent that we have, the talent that we've been able to get, and the talent that we've been able to recruit and keep here has been, you know, unmatched or as good as you can find anywhere else. I think the energy and hustle in New York, you know, maybe that's driven from being the finance capital of the world, whatever it is, just like the nonstop energy is certainly exhausting. So we all need our break from that at some point. But it's really a great environment to build a company. I think from a fintech perspective, a lot of the leading fintechs, you know, Clair, Bilt, Ramp, Betterment, Brex, et cetera, Plaid. There's so many companies that have huge hubs here. A lot of them have huge hubs downtown. So I think, you know, the ability to talk to folks like you guys, talk to other folks, we've never had any interest in opening an office outside of New York, and I don't think we ever would.
The product development bench felt a little thinner here than in San Francisco. Like that is something I noticed when we were initially starting off. But for us, like because we were partnering with, and actually you guys did the same, when you were partnering with these like huge private equity funds that owns all of these portfolios of buildings, for us, these are like these big payroll providers that like these companies don't like to take risks. The idea that you can hire from big banking institutions or like folks from JP Morgan, I think made a big difference because they're folks with like a compliance mindset and like whereas, you know, the kind of move fast, break things approach might fit less well with fintech, honestly.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit before. This is maybe embarrassing my personal life, but I honestly have not been to San Francisco since COVID. So we never, and I'm guessing
it's been 5 years, right?
Yeah, 5 years. And I'm guessing I need to go to Napa. And I'm not sure, Anchor's maybe been once, but we've never had to go there to raise capital. There's great funds here. And there's great funds there too, so we can spend time with them. But you know, we've never, from a business need, from a personnel need, from a capital need, we've never had to leave New York.
Do you guys see a difference in the type of talent? I mean, talent is these days is a little bit everywhere, but the difference in type of talent between the West Coast and the East Coast?
Yeah, hard to answer because obviously people move around a lot. On the West Coast, I've encountered startups and founders and companies that are very much focusing on your kind of classic product development journey. And so they'll know, you know, great designers, and they'll know people who have kind of done the whole PM thing at Dropbox or something like that. And there's definitely value to that. I think like if you're, especially in a sort of high iteration consumer business, I definitely sort of consider hiring from those places. And if it helps you bring folks by being over there, then that helps. Once again, here, like these companies like, you know, Affirm, Plaid, and the other sort of New York-based fintechs, they are consumer businesses, but they are also largely sort of big partnership businesses. And I think that just because a lot of companies go public here and because a lot of big banks are here, you get a lot of that here.
I guess the only thing I would say, like this again, just based on our experience and people we have, is I never get a sense from our team of like chasing the next fad. Like when we were building and then crypto was really hot in 2021, like I never get a sense from our team like, oh, we have to go do that. I think just you're exposed to a lot more of like the new thing. You're getting told the new hot thing. And so I think honestly, like one of the things I've always loved is, specifically on the engineering side, like I spend most of our time with our engineers like talking about the business. And like when we're trying to recruit them, hire them, like we get honestly a lot more questions on like unit economics and growth of business, et cetera. And so there's like a business mindset, I think, and finance mindset to everybody that we hire, from engineering to marketing to the actual finance team. That is fantastic in New York. It very well might be true in SF too, but it's one of the things I think is quite unique about New York.
All right, well, let's pivot topic towards the COO journey. So what is a COO at a scaling fintech in New York?
It's what I dreamed about when I was a kid at 5 years old. No, I think each company is probably pretty unique. I'm guessing our days are somewhat are probably honestly more different than or similar, but part of that depends on, your co-founder relationship, the strengths and weaknesses of the team at the time. My end goal or dream would be honestly to hire myself to have a job. That's how I know I'd really done my job well, and everybody else can run and I can get out of the way fully. Right now, my day is just like dealing with problems. So if things are working well, those are great days for me. I at times wonder what I'm doing at the company, but I really spend time trying to, fill in gaps. I could be recruiting a new person, helping a team or different teams prioritize across the company. I think it's something that is constantly evolving. What I was doing a year ago versus what I'm doing now versus what I was doing 4 years ago when we started is all very different. But really, like I think of my job is making sure that we have the best players, the best athletes in the right positions for them, where, if I truly didn't show up for work the next day, everything would be running totally fine.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, so when you told me we were going to do this, I was like, I guess I am a COO. So I've seen the definition of that role change so much. So for example, Mike Vaughn, that we know, who's CEO of Venmo, his role was narrow in some ways. Like he did play a role making sure the executive team was running and running stuff on the data side, which at Clair, Allison, our chief of staff, is doing really well. And then you look at what Tim Cook used to do, like totally different vibe. For me, essentially, it was a lot of building departments initially, right? So like, how do you get marketing started? How do you get partnerships started? How do you get sales started, et cetera? Thing is, like, once you've built all of them, well, you end up running them. And so you often end up running a lot of things. I think like a year ago, I had 9 direct reports and they were all, covering all these different departments. And obviously, like after a while, you start figuring out, like, I don't even oversee operations actually. Right now, our finance guy does. My personal core has been product, tech, design, legal and compliance, just like basically building what I really believe in the most in this company, which is like, how do you take payroll systems? How do you get really, really good products into the hands of users? And so that's kind of where I landed with my definition of what a COO is.
At the end of the day, you guys are the closest to the day-to-day operations, right? Whether it's product and ops, whether it's like everything else that you're covering, Dan. We have very high goals, both of our companies. We want to raise the bar consistently. We feel like we've really just started penetrating our markets, and we have a lot ahead of us. And so how do you find time, and how do you balance the big picture stuff with the day-to-day fires?
Yes, I mean, I think, I'd say a couple of things. I think this is one of the challenges that, we're 193 people, which feels like a crazy amount of people. We always said we never want to be, greater than 50. We never want to be greater than 100. We're fortunate we have a office building that is maxed out at 5 floors. And so now we just say, hey, there's no more space, over large. Unfortunately, like if you come to our office, that means that people are like literally working on top of each other. When we do the employee feedback, my favorite one I ever got was, sometimes coming to the office feels like I'm working out of a New York City subway train, but then they go, it feels very New York, so I'm okay with it. So I think like instilling that in startup mindset in every new person that we hire. And one of the key benefits we have is everybody is in the office 5 days a week, full stop. I'm following a Slack that we have between our CX team and one of our outsourced vendors. And like, I can see the outsourced vendor from the DR say, hey, we've gotten 3 inbounds on the same thing. Honestly, even before our customer service team can see it, I'm honestly seeing that. I can grab the engineer that I know works on that, grab the product person, grab the CX team. We all can be in a room. And then the thing is, we actually can push a change in real time. And we can do all that because we're all in the same office. We're all kind of in the weeds. I think the biggest thing is instilling the mindset in every additional person that we hire that is new to the company, like new to our philosophy, that like anything can get done today.
Yeah.
Slack in real time. Let's get in the room. Let's figure out a game plan. And I think honestly, a lot of that stems from, unfortunately, my personal life being online a lot, but two, like being in person. And I think it's like the mindset that there's really no problem that happens in the company that with the right resources couldn't be solved in a day.
Yeah. Alex, what do you think? Matching the bigger picture and the things that truly matter to the day-to-day fires, how do you manage that?
I guess like I take that very literally, and I don't know if there's a lot of people who are on boards here or are founders who have to report to a board, but that process for me has been super useful. I basically assume that, we have to be a little careful about it, but I assume that for 3 months I can just go heads down and figure out everything I can, every problem that needs to be solved, negotiating contracts, trying to figure out team structures, that kind of stuff, and really only pull my head out of the water every 3 months to like look at my co-founder and being like, so is this the right direction, or should we be like rethinking something about our budget or strategy, something like that? And then we, with Allison's help, our chief of staff, roll that into OKRs, and we're pretty freaking regimented about that. I think like we've ranked our priorities and our projects, but we also even rank our partners. And so if like there's 2 conflicting calls, our team will be like, well, I'm not going to that, and I'm going to this one. And I think like between those 2 things, we've been pretty effective at figuring out how to talk strategy enough. There's also a mix that changes, right? Like in the early stages, years 1, 2, 3, you need to be asking yourself a lot more bigger questions and be very sort of disciplined about understanding that. Years like, now we're at 4 and 5, like we know what we're doing basically.
Yeah. All right, one more question and then we'll go to a rapid fire. So what skills or mindset should aspiring startup COOs cultivate? There might be some people here interested in that answer.
I think you need to love working with every single kind of person and love like a huge variety of problems. Because whether you like it or not, you're not going to be able to dive into something for a long time. I personally love working with the diversity you have in design and engineering and legal and all of that. So if you're a little bit ADD and love doing a lot of stuff like that, I think you'll go far.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think work ethic, it's the same true as any job. Like you need to have, especially in the early stage, a incredible work ethic. I haven't really solved the ability to sleep when we have issues. So, I think people who have a better balance in terms of, I think you get more and more comfortable with the ability to sleep just surviving problems. But I think at the core, it's work ethic.
All right. Now for the real reason we're here. I have a rapid fire list of questions that are very New York focused. All right, you guys ready?
Let's do it.
New York City bagels or pizza?
Pizza.
Yeah, I'm pizza too.
Pizza too.
What's your favorite pizza spot?
Pizza.
I was sure you're gonna say bagels. Alex eats a bagel every Monday at lunch with a super
if I ate a
face.
pizza every morning, my wife would be like,
All right, fine. Favorite productivity hack?
Hiring great people and putting a time block of 15 minutes on my Twitter.
15 minutes on your Twitter?
On my Twitter.
Wait, we're gonna have to get out of rapid fire. Explain.
If I have a free hour block on my calendar and I open up my Twitter and I guess my X app, I can scroll for a half hour and that's just totally wasted and not productive. It's funny, I actually saw this in real life. I lost my phone. I didn't realize like when you get a new phone, you actually have to upset the time blocks. Like, wow, like I've sat here now for an hour on Twitter. I was like, fuck, I didn't have the actual, it was a total waste of an hour. And I guess the third productivity hack would be just keeping busy. Because when you're super busy, you realize that you can actually miss an entire news cycle and be totally okay with that.
Yeah.
good reminder.
Yeah. All right, Alex.
Hire great people as well. Totally undersold that when we started. And make sure you work on stuff that gives you energy, not just like reviewing contracts day in, day out. Unless you love that.
I like that.
Look, the AI stuff, is legit. It's awesome. Like it can actually make reviewing contracts much more fun.
Yes.
We have like a weekly AI challenge, which is like each employee every week goes up against Ankur or another member of the leadership team or CTO and they have a competition on who can use AI more effectively. We had 2 full AI days. So I don't think it's cliche to say like those are true productivity hacks. Those just have to be part of, how every company builds. I'd give one example on that. I give our CTO a lot of credit. We did a 2-day, everybody just canceled all the other meetings. It was just, how do you make AI more part of your daily life? And it was not how do you incorporate AI into your life, but how do you actually start from an AI first mindset? And there were some of the engineers who were just kind of saying, hey, look, like, how I write code is still better than the other way. And our CTO said, he gave a coding language that nobody knew. And he said, you have to build code in that language. And so it forced everybody to say, hey, like, they didn't know how to use that. They didn't know how to write that language. And everybody immediately started using AI and realized how much quicker starting that new code was from using an AI first mindset.
I love it. All right, most underrated fintech trend.
You go first.
My initial answer was trying to be profitable. I kind of stand by it.
That's a good one. The core things I don't think are underrated. I think 2 things that every fintech needs to manage. One is redundancies. You talked about the Snap stuff, but we all have to work with different banks, et cetera. And so as you scale and grow, redundancy is key to help you kind of sleep better. And then 2, like, there's not a fintech company I know that doesn't have to deal with a significant amount of stuff in and around, the fraud space. And it hits everybody from the B2B players to the B2C players and everything in between. Those issues are just proliferating. So that has to be a differentiator for you because it actually, like, the true thing about fraud is it drives the good customer experience. And so being able to have the right amount of friction while not impacting, the experience for 99% of good customers, I think is a core thing that you have to get right.
Perfect. All right, last one. One leadership lesson you learned the hard way.
I'd say 2 things. I think it really goes back to the hiring side. I think one is, and maybe this was just my, liberal brown history upbringing, but you can't create a culture that's going to work for every single one of your employees. There's going to be 193 people. Everybody's going to have a different view on different things. So you have to have your culture and stick to it. And then 2, I think on hiring, like if it's not a strong yes, it's a no. There can't be like this person may be working out or like if it doesn't work out in this role, we could do something, they could transition to that. Looking back, like we unfortunately haven't had many, but the hiring mistakes early on was because we tried to fit it and we said, hey, it might work in any way that we felt really good about. Like take the time, like, you guys talked about it took 6 months to find a GC. It took us 18 months to find a head of people, and she's been the most life-changing hire that we could have had across the company. But it took a lot of time, but on that 18th month, everyone's like, this is the person.
I think being just hyper transparent with the team all the time. Like you get weirdly in your head at the beginning when you're starting a company about what people can and cannot know. And there's way less that people cannot know than you initially think. And, getting up on a weekly basis and telling your team, like, I looked at this chart and I'm really worried about it, or I feel like we've killed it there, but this is kind of where we're underperforming. Doing that on a daily basis is going to sort of outdo any great detailed goal setting you're ever going to send out for people to really understand where you're at. And yeah, especially goal setting is fluid over time. So now we basically try to do that. We're just constantly going around and giving our unsolicited opinions. And I feel like when you've got a resilient team, it's the best way to do it.
Yeah, trust the team. All right, we have a few more minutes, so we're gonna open it up for questions. What questions do you have for Dan and Alex? Go ahead, please introduce yourself.
Suraj from Galileo Financial Technologies. So I have a question for the both of you related to, I think for Bilt, and Ankur spoke about this at South Park Commons about like the moment where he kind of realized that, you really got to work with the property managers and then all the endowment funds that own that, right? Like, so I guess wanted to, just hear like, what was that discovery process for you guys, right? Like you went and talked to big tech, and as you mentioned, like they didn't really give a shit. So like, how do you go back into the drawing room and figure out your distribution channels? And then for Clair, I know you guys launched the card with Galileo, and then what was that discovery process to pivot to kind of do that deposit sweep solution that's more of a B2B play than B2C.
This is why these both are founders, and Ankur's a founder. He has and you two as well, I hope this has grown on me, but has we will figure out a solution. Go back to the drawing board and find a yes. I'll never forget it. Ankur and I spent a lot of time on it. I still have my private equity job. We went and met with the largest real estate owner related. The CEO, Jeff Blau, is one of the smartest people in real estate. And we pitched him on the idea. And this was a very half-baked idea. We didn't really know what we were doing. It's just not the person you should be pitching with a half-baked idea. And he was like, look, this doesn't sound exciting at all. Happy to talk to you guys again in 6 months. So I walk out of that meeting. I'm like, Ankur, great to know you. I'm running back to my grand private equity job. And he walks out of that meeting saying, what do you mean? That was a great meeting. I'm like, were we in the same meeting? He's like, he agreed to talk to us again in 6 months. We have 6 months to go back to the drawing board and get this right. And to his credit, 6 months later, Related was our first investor and signed on as a partner. And that was because, it was that mindset of an entrepreneur, which is go in, figure it out, take the feedback, and not be not just take no for an answer. And I think you have to do that repeatedly. I feel like every single day you have to go back and push yourself to say how do you do things better? How do you make the experience better? How do you continue to innovate? How do you forget what has gotten you this far and continue to kind of drive and grow? And I think that is what makes entrepreneurs great.
I mean, we tried everything on the card products, we were flying to see every business in the US. I think I visited 42 states as a result of trying to launch business after business. Nico was trying to close Scion Health, a big hospital network, and just iterating through things. You start also, I think, seeing what you're good and you're not good at. I think the Bilt team has proven that they're really good at honestly creating a super powerful brand that people want to adopt and a world they want to be part of. That's never been Clair's strength. We're good with, just smart fintech product strategy, legal and compliance. And I think leaning into those is where we realized that the debit card product was pulling on too much of the strengths we didn't have. Whereas this new direction, which is still B2B2C, but to your point, leans more B2B, is more aligned with that.
Josh Tannenbaum, managing partner for Rebalance Capital. What's unique about this conversation is not that you're both COOs, and kudos to you, Nico, for giving space for that functional focus, but you're also intermediate solutions, meaning you distribute property managers or payroll solutions. I think early in the journey, most founders find that winning the intermediated relationship is the hard part. But then once you grow up in the space, you realize it's actually the execution and rollout that's really the hard part.
Yeah.
So I'd love from your experience from an execution perspective, how you can master the distribution after you've won the contract.
Yeah, I think you just want to answer the question. I think that's exactly right. We say to our teams every day, execution is how you win. If you're the leadership team or whatever, and you can't win the sales, and you don't have a compelling pitch, you don't have a compelling value prop, you're probably not able to raise capital, recruit people, all the other things. So having a compelling value prop and being compelling on the sales, I think, is a prerequisite essentially. And then it becomes an execution rollout. I'm guessing we deal with similar issues. The real estate space is not one that likes change. Not a lot of change has happened. They do not trust technology. They are somewhat burned in their defense by what I would call prop tech 1.0, where there was a lot of solutions that overpromised and underdelivered. So I think we still fight that battle every day. At the end of the day, we run our team literally every single month. Every single first of the month is the most important day. If we screw that up, we will not have a second, we won't have a May 2nd.
Yeah, the B2B2C problem is a big one. The first B sounds great, but you need the C to get the revenue. I was actually invited to dinner by one of our anchor investors, Thrive, where it was just me and a bunch of other companies that a lot of you here will know that I won't name. And the partner was all right, none of you guys have figured out how to get the second C. So let's talk about this. And everybody had raised these great rounds on we got Walmart, we got this, we got that, and ultimately you need to turn it into revenue. I think one thing we've really noticed with Nico is just how important the actual partners you end up betting on are. It might sound obvious, but when you're in the early stages, you're not going to go knock on Walmart's door and close them. So you need to figure out what your journey towards there is. And one of our first partners, we launched with them. They're a time management solution that served 1.8 million employees across the US. And we launched a little widget that allowed you to get your pay every day. When we launched that, the entire business's software just went down for something like a week. And so clearly their product development team needed some help. And the go-to-market on that one, the contract to launch was something 9 months when it could have been 1 month. Now I think our partners are actually pushing us to think about, we're more nimble than them obviously, but they have more experience in their space and they have great product teams, and they also have dedicated product managers to the product we're building, which is new. And that's just completely changed the game. I think we're now sort of learning a lot from our partners, and that allows us to be their customer support is telling us that someone wasn't happy with something, and so we can flip the product, and instead of being at 2% penetration, we can slowly climb up to 20. And that's how you get a partner who's excited about your product, seeing a lot of revenue, and ultimately going to recommend you to someone else.
We have time for one more question. Oh, here you go.
My name is Nathan Chelston. I'm intrigued to know, you both mentioned, you were saying you're looking to, at some point your dream is to hire somebody to replace you, right? You went from having 9 direct reports now maybe smaller. How do you manage that growth as you grow and have more success? You step back. How do you know when you need to have somebody else come in? When are you ready for that? Really intrigued.
Yeah, look, I think it's a constant evolution. I think one of the things that I've been struggling on, and it's both exciting, is honestly I have more time to actually think about what are the needle moving things that you're spending time on. You can never be out of the weeds, because if you're out of the weeds, then you can't be helpful to your teams. So it's how do you balance being the right amount in the weeds, but actually have the time to think about the things that in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months can really drive real value for the business. As you grow, I think it's natural to say that you hire much more generalists in the beginning and you start hiring more specialists, and that's true. People who our whole concept's around ownership, and people who really own a specific function. Everybody has to own something and are really experts in that and will know that and can drive that much better than I could ever. And so then I think it becomes a different challenge, which is how do you make the best use of when you have more time. And that's an evolution, something I honestly even struggle with every day. There's certain days when you're in the weeds and you knock something out that you feel good about that. And there's certain days I have where, I might, if something I'm working on that's longer term, that I might not have made any incremental progress that day. And you get home, you're what did I do today? But that's when you kind of can step back and say, hey, we're working on these things that will take a little bit more time. We're putting in the right pieces. How do you make incremental progress on those each day?
I think as a founder or exec member, in this case COO, you're going to be by definition not qualified to run any of your departments yourself. And you don't know that initially. You try to run product or marketing yourself, and then you start seeing just how much is going on in the space that you don't understand, et cetera. But you can also not hire for 9 executives at once. You need to choose which ones are most important. And that's literally just what drives your day-to-day approach to solving that issue, right? It's do I feel I can live another year without having, in our case, 2 years ago, a marketing lead. And we're yeah, we're a B2B2C company. We can figure it out without that. And today we couldn't. So that's just been my approach, yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Round of applause for them.
Thank you, Nico.